got your kid. You have dreams that maybe one day your kid will be up there going, I'd like to thank the Nobel Academy. Then you have this other dream where your kid's going, do you want fries with this?
I love you, but what are you doing?
I'm doing the Plausibly Live podcast.
That's funny.
Like so many of you, I have a great number of concerns about the future. And I don't necessarily even mean the Joe Biden future or the Kamala Harris future or 2024 or even beyond that. Not really what I'm talking about. What I'm concerned about is we've lost our way. And I'm not sure sometimes how to communicate that. I'm not sure how to construct this podcast, this show, this video cast, in a way that clearly demonstrates my concerns about the future. I've said on numerous occasions, this show, Plausibly Live, really isn't for you. I love my audience, and that's really what we're going to talk about today. I love the fact that there are people who listen to me. I'm always blown away by the fact that there are. But it's really for Ben in so many ways, because somehow or another I have to leave him a legacy of understanding, an education that when he needs it most will be there for him. It's a reversal of one of the concepts that I've carried for a long time. One of my favorite stories, it's not my favorite one, but one of my favorite stories in the Tanakh, what Christians call the Old Testament, is the story of Esther. Now, not for the reasons that you might think. I mean, it's a beautiful story. Jewish girl becomes queen of Persia, saves her people from the wicked Haman. We get drunk. It's great. We actually have a rabbinical law that we have to get drunk on Purim when we celebrate this. We have Ammenstocken and we make noises, and it's a fun holiday, but it's a reminder of a deeper concern, which is that people have always tried to eradicate the Jews. The Holocaust of World War II was not the first, nor will it be the last. The deeper issue in the story, the deeper concept in the story is one that I guess, I don't know why, I picked up on it a long time ago. And it was something that has always carried me, has always been a part of me. And that's this concept that Mordecai, when he's trying to communicate to Esther the dire gravity of the situation, the need for what needs to happen, he makes it clear to her that whatever's going to happen is going to happen regardless of whether you decide to participate in it or not. And he uses a phrase, who knows if just for something like this is why you were put in the position you are. Who knows that this isn't the very reason why you've been put here. To me, that is really the essence of the story of Esther. I realize that many of my pastoral friends will come up with a different exegesis out of that, and I get all that, but for me, that's always been the real heart and soul of the story of Esther. What do I mean then when I say, what if it's just for such a moment as this is the thrust of the story? It was a long time ago. I'm starting to realize just how long ago it was. In fact, it was 2 generations ago. It was a lifetime ago. I was a Navy instructor. I didn't want to be a Navy instructor. I got to be clear about this. I had no interest in becoming a naval instructor whatsoever. Didn't want to do it. I won't say I fought it tooth and nail because I didn't, but it isn't what I wanted to do. In point of fact, when I went to Mark 88 Poseidon Sea School, I had an expectation of going overseas to Scotland, where I was going to be on the tender for a couple of years. And I had a sports car at the time. I was taking it with me. I had tickets on the QE2 with my car. I was going to drive all around Europe. I had all these grandiose plans of these things I was going to do. But situations change, geopolitical situations change, and there was a global shift in how the Navy was going to be doing things. Wasn't that they didn't still need me to go there, but they wanted me to stay for longer than I should have been. Normal tour would have been 2 years. They wanted me to stay for 3, which would have been extending my sea time and extending my contract and all those kinds of things. And people were already working on me for the next subject we're going to talk about, which was they wanted me to go to seminary. And so I was starting to feel like, well, maybe it's not the right thing to do. And so I would tell the detailer, I can't go for 3 years. I'll go for 2 for sure. And if I like it over there, I'll stay. But I can't commit to 3 years. He said, no, I need you for 3 or you're not going. I said, well, that makes a lot of sense. What are you going to do? And I said, okay, let's send me to new construction up in New London, Connecticut, and I'll commission a new submarine and yada, yada, get my plank owner badge and that sort of stuff. And he's like, nope, can't do that either because now you're a Poseidon tech. I can't send you to a Trident submarine. He said, well, but they're decomming all the Poseidon submarines. What are you going to do? I didn't take this course to become a Poseidon fire controlman at sea. I took this course because I wanted to learn more about fire control. And this was a good way to do it. Well, all I can do is leave you there. You can either go to Scotland for 3 years or I can leave you there as an instructor for 4 years, which is what I had left on my contract. I'm like, wait a sec. I'm not an instructor. And he said, well, now you have orders to instructor school. Ka-ching. And it was a losing fight. And I didn't want to burn too many bridges, but I didn't want to go to Scotland for a guaranteed 3 years because, if I went for 3, it would end up being 4. So I took the instructor job, and it wasn't what I wanted to do. And like I said, really wasn't where I wanted to be. But I had a bunch of students over the course that I was an instructor to whom I was transferring my knowledge of fire control and nuclear weapons safety and security and submarining in general. And because somehow or another I ended up as the assistant athletic director for our school, I was teaching people how to play ball too. I was coaching basketball. I was coaching football. I was teaching kids how to do those things. At least one of whom actually went on to the greater things there. I transferred them the knowledge that I had and sent them out to the fleet with the full expectation that they would forget me because I was just one of many instructors and the lessons that I had imparted to them, because that's what I did when I went to the fleet. I think there's maybe 2 of my instructors that I can remember by name, and one of those only because he ended up sending me on the submarine with me. Well, yeah, one of them. So that's what I fully expected to have happen. That's what I thought would happen. Or so I thought. When I got out of the Navy in 1991, in June of 1991, at the end of the first Gulf War, like I said, I went to seminary and became a pastor. Now, let me be clear about this. I did not want to become a pastor. To this day, it's one of the biggest regrets of my life. I was not called to be a pastor. I was not moved by God in any way, shape, or form to be a pastor. But I knew a lot of people who I assumed were godly people, and they kept telling me, hey, God's calling you. God's talking to you. And so I trusted them and I listened and I went to seminary and became a pastor. For the record, they were lying. I don't know that they knew that they were lying, but clearly they were, because literally nobody who knows me, really knows me, ever in a million years would have said, hey, that guy would be a great pastor. There's some reasons for it that I'm not going to get into today. But the bottom line is I became a pastor. Didn't want to, but I became a pastor. I had 2 congregations over my time in pastorship, and I learned a lot of lessons from them. I really did. I've talked about it in the past. My first congregation was primarily Jamaican, mostly Caribbean islanders. I had just come out of the Navy where 11 o'clock means 10:30. And if you know anything about Caribbean islanders, you know that 11 o'clock means sometime between 11:30 and dinner. So it was a learning experience. My second congregation was very mountainous, Appalachian almost, and there was some real learning there. But in our particular denomination that I belonged to at the time, pastors were rarely in any one place for more than 2 or 3 years. And so congregations were used to pastors coming and going and coming and going and coming and going. And I figured, what am I? I'm just another lifelong procession of easily forgettable faces, barely listened to sermons, and very little actual impact on people's lives. Or so I thought. In the end, I became a radio talk show host. And I've talked about that in the past, how that happened and why that happened. And I'm still amazed that I was able to pull it off, because this was something that I did want to have happen. When I left pastoralship, I went into nonprofit management for the same denomination, by the way, the Salvation Army. And that should tell you something. I was a terrible pastor, but they liked my business skills enough that they hired me to run business side of things. I was good at it. I mean, that's just hands down. I was good at it, but I hated it. Not because it was boring, folks. It's the same thing over and over again. In nonprofit work, I mean, very rarely do you actually get to do anything new, challenging, or exciting, or even not quite so stressful. I mean, when you're trying to make a payroll every month, and I realize sometimes you had to get creative and that sort of thing, and I realize meeting a payroll is something that business people do every day, but there's only so many ways to do that when you're a nonprofit. You can't introduce a new product. You can't advertise. Those kind of things go out the window. One of the reasons why I was always enamored with Christine Papworth, the real estate doctor, was when I met her, she was in the process of coming up with new ideas and new ways of doing things, and I was fascinated by it. We at our first meeting, I don't even think we talked about radio in the sense of how to or when to. We spent the whole time talking about what she wanted to accomplish as a real estate agent. And remember, that was right as the wave was starting up for the great crash in 2008, 2009. I was always fascinated by her. And people like that, like Christine Papworth and others, amaze me because they're willing to take chances and risks and try things. And in the nonprofit world, I wasn't able to do that. When the opportunity came to get into talk radio, I'm not going to lie to you. I saw the door. I saw the light through the crack in the door. When I saw it, I kicked my foot into the door thinking, what's the worst that can happen? And amazingly enough, the door flew open and things worked out the way they did. And I had a very successful, I think, radio career. Something that I very much enjoyed. Something that I am still to this day amazed that I was able to do, and something that I was able to give up on my own terms, which most people in radio never get the opportunity to do. I gave it up on my own terms, and I'd like to be back on the air somewhere someday. It's not the be all end all of my existence anymore. So I can live with that. I had an audience that listened, as all radio audiences do, in 15-minute increments, because that's how radio works. You listen for 15 minutes. As soon as it goes to commercial break, you hit the button and go to the other station. What are they doing? And as soon as they go to commercial break, maybe you come back to this one. And the challenge was getting people to not push that button. They moved on to whatever other stations they were listening to, or so I thought. That's what I thought was happening. In subsequent years, and this is the lesson of the story of Esther. What if you were put here just for this reason. And you may never know. You may never know why you were put here. Mordecai tries to tell Esther. It was about, I guess it's been about a month ago now. I didn't really write it down. I still have it on my phone. I got a text message from a Facebook message, text message, from one of my former students when I was teaching Navy fire control. And it wasn't the usual, hey man, how you doing? I think I've had 3 or 4 over the years connect with me and some of the other instructors and the like. And I love that and I appreciate that. But this wasn't that message. This wasn't, hey Dave, what you been up to? Boy, I sure missed the way you taught. It was none of that. It was a message, and I'm not going to tell you the guy's name because I don't want to embarrass him or anything like that. But it was a message about how I had impacted his life and how he had gone on from his Navy career, and he wasn't a lifer either. He'd gone on from his Navy career to do things that he wanted to do, and he still recalls lessons and still recalls things that I transferred to him all those years ago. And he said it in such a way that made me feel like, well, what if the only reason I was there was for him? What if all of that stuff I put up with and all of that stuff I did that I didn't want to do was just so I could be there for this one guy who needed to hear that at that time? You may never know. Well, someday you might find out, huh? There have been a couple of occasions, I'm not going to tell you there's a lot, because I look at my time as a pastor as, I don't want to call it a colossal failure, but it wasn't time well spent either. It wasn't a time where I was doing something, in my view, worthwhile or useful or anything else. But there were a couple of moments and a couple of times where I've heard from people who were in my congregations at that point who have said to me, you said something, and they'll usually know the date. You said something on June 22nd, 1995 that has stuck with me ever since. And for those of you that are radio people or podcast people, you'll know that my preaching and teaching is very similar to the way I do my shows. I didn't learn this from radio. I learned this as a Navy instructor. And even that isn't the way they want you to do it, which is probably why I is so memorable, I guess, in that aspect. But they will tell me things. You said something on that day that has stuck with me ever since. And all these, and there's not a lot of them, but there's all this time that has passed where you start realizing, well, what if all this I went through, all this discomfort, personal, internal existential circumstances where I was struggling, with a lot of things at that time. What if the reason I was going through that was so that I could be there for that person, for that moment? Who knows if you weren't created for just such a moment as this? My radio career, that has been something that I have been most appreciative of. Radio and podcasting is those messages that I get every now and then. I don't get a lot of them. I'm not going to lie to you. I don't get them every day. But the idea that you're reaching people and you're communicating with people and you're transferring something of yourself to them that they like, that they enjoy, that they want to hear again. I was driving one day, I think it was on Oakdale Road in Modesto, and it was a Friday afternoon, and I had to leave early because of something going on that night. As I recall, it may have been something with Ben's bris, pre-bris or something like that. I don't remember exactly what it was. But I had to leave early. And so we had recorded Fun with News early. And this was still when Kai and I were doing it. And it was running pre-recorded, so I wasn't really in the studio. And as I was driving up Oakdale Road, I had my window down and pulled up to a stoplight, and I looked over on one side of me, and the guy in the car was just dying laughing. I mean, he was bent over laughing so hard. And I looked over to the other side, and the couple in the car next to me were laughing and pointing and gesturing, but they were laughing. And I turned my radio down because I wanted to, and they had their radio windows down, and I realized that they were listening to Fun with News with Dave and Kai. And that's a special moment. I texted Kai at the time. I said, "This is the greatest thing in the world right here." But even for that, I think the moments where I've realized that people appreciated it, when they send me those text messages or those emails saying, "Dave, you said something once upon a time and it stayed with me. It's changed how I view this. I'm thinking different. I don't agree with you on everything, but here's something that you've taught me to think about. Maybe this way, maybe that way." I have a very good listener friend that we're texting a lot. I mean, probably my number one texter. And, one day I just asked him, "How you doing?" And the response I got was, it was amazing. It was literally, nobody ever asks me that. It's a heavy responsibility, and at the same time, it's something that I very much enjoy. And there are times when I find myself not wanting to do this anymore. Someone pointed out, I think it was Roger, pointed out that, I sounded a little down, I guess, after the election. I wasn't down in the sense of I'm depressed about Biden being president. I have reached the point where I don't think it matters who the president is. The way we're doing things in this country is so screwed up right now that it's just a pendulum swinging back and forth, as my friend Mike Bennett says. That's all it is. It's just government by a pen and a phone. There's no national discussion or debate about anything. There's no thinking anymore. It's just my president won, so we get to punish you and reward us, and the other way around. Maybe I was, maybe I wasn't. Maybe I was just trying to communicate to you that we got to start thinking differently because things are changing. And I don't know where we're going to end up. I really don't. I wish I could sit here and tell you that, in 2 years, the Republicans are going to win the Senate and the House, but I don't know that they will. And in fact, one of my favorite maxims of my own is never underestimate the GOP's ability to screw things up. So there's that, but maybe they win or they win. I don't know. Maybe Joe Biden gets impeached. Who knows? Maybe in 2024, Trump runs again. I don't know what's going to happen. What I do know is that Congress isn't willing to do the things that they need to do to stop this kind of nonsense from happening, because they very easily could. They should. The Constitution says this is how we do it. But we're so far beyond that now, I don't know where we're going. And this is what leads me to these moments where I hope that I'm saying things that influence thinking of people that I don't even realize that I'm influencing. Yes, my target is Ben. Yes, I'm trying to leave a record for Ben to have, to look back at and go, maybe we should be thinking this way in the face of whatever is to come. And maybe that happens. Maybe it doesn't. It's the old Robin Williams thing. I have this dream about my child growing up to win the Nobel Prize. Remember this? One of the Robin Williams' most brilliant bits. Son becomes this great scientist or something, and then I have this other dream where he says, "You want fries with that?" Maybe Ben doesn't. I don't know. All I can do is try. All I can do is continue to push these things forward and make sure that they're available for him. And at the same time, maybe just such a reason as this, just such a time as this, I'm here for other people. And I may never know that. I may never know what impact I've had on you, what impact you've had on me. I may never know. I appreciate the thank you notes. I appreciate the supportive notes. I got one this past week that is just very personal and very incredible. I'm not going to tell you what was in it, but it was a note that just reminded me that people that I don't hear from every day, people I don't see every day, are still a part of this. Still a part of this effort, still a part of this goal, still a part of what we're trying to accomplish. And who knows whether it was just for such a time as this that I was given all of this. And if it was, then it'd be a shame to waste it all, wouldn't it? And if it was just for such a time as this, then it doesn't really matter if I don't want to do it. It's destiny, calling, whatever you want to look at it as. It's going to happen. Thank you so much for being a part of this. Thank you so much for your encouragement, for your notes. Thank you. And for being with me. And hopefully this journey will go a lot further, a lot farther, and a lot faster, a lot further, a lot faster. And who knows? Maybe we'll change the world.